ceiling fan controller that I ordered from Rock Auto for the Corvette. And if you look here, you can see there's a little dial screw there that is supposed to set where you want the fan to kick on temperature wise. These are a little bit harder to find, but you can get them on Rock Auto, and it is a brand name BOASH, made in China, and it's a Bosch knockoff. Sounds like name wise they do that. A lot of your C4 Corvettes have two fans, so this has got two fan outputs with 25 amp fuses already in them, and it's got a wiring diagram, but the green wire goes to your AC to kick your second fan on. You could probably use this also as a override switch, and I may do that because mine's only got one fan. I'm not sure how that works with the AC. It probably works through the system that's there, which I could fix. I think I know what's wrong with it, but this is probably an upgrade because it kicks on at about 223, 224 degrees. I don't want the car to run that hot. You can run these cars at lower temperature, and they will, from what I have read, won't be quite as fuel efficient, but they'll have more power, and it's actually better on the engines. But emissions wise, they may not pass emissions. But you've got your main input that will go to the battery to get your 25 amps of power to run. You got your ground. Green wire goes to the AC. The yellow wire goes to the ignition, so the fan won't come on unless you've got the car on. And this is the block sensor. You can get two different kinds on Rock Auto. You can get the kind that has a sensor that just fits between the ribs in the radiator itself, but I wanted the one where it actually goes into where the original sensor goes. This one's a little different. The other one's a one-wire sensor, and how it activates, once it reaches the temperature, it grounds itself to the block, and you can even test them by pulling the one wire off and just grounding it onto the manifold, and the fan should kick on. If this is bad, you can test them this way. This has got two wires, a little different, and it's smaller. I'm hoping the threads, once I get it out, are the same size. If they're not, I'm going to have to send it back. But the fact that you can adjust the temperature, I'm running a 190-degree thermostat, and I will probably try and set this at 205, where the fan kicks on at 205 degrees instead of 224, which is you know, a 20-degree difference, and we'll try that. And also, I got my harness side lead for my oxygen sensor and the knock sensor lead. We're going to try and solder them in, and we can run it that way, and we're going to do that first, get those two in. And I didn't mention, but on Rock Auto, these are about $15, which is a hell of a deal as far as I'm concerned. It's pretty heavy, but again, the quality I'm not sure about, but the fact that we can adjust the temperature, to me, is going to be a plus, because we're going to do some things to modify our Corvette. We're going to try and get more air to it, and we're going to run it cooler and try and make a little more horsepower. Okay, you can kind of see what we've done here. I put the wires together in this fashion. This is the best way to keep correct voltage flow, and you want that especially on a sensor. You don't want to just twist them together, and it doesn't take very much flux at all. But before I twisted them together, they were open, and I kind of meshed them together and then twisted them lightly. And we haven't soldered yet, but we've got our flux on there, and we've got our heat shrink tube back there already on, so we can just slide it forward and heat shrink it together. That's the best way to do these, is solder them. If you just tie them in together, you're going to change the resistance of the sensor, most likely. Finished product. I could have gone with just a little bit smaller heat shrink, but it came together. It doesn't take very much solder either. You don't want any bumps in your soldering or anything. Just let it kind of soak into the wire and mesh the wires, and that should be as good of or better connection than actual wire. Alright, did the same thing to this side. Got our wire loom on there, kind of protected from the heat, and we mounted it back where it was originally mounted, and then fastened it back really well into the original, zip tied it back into the original harness, so there's no play on the wire there. So we should be good. For our fuel filter replacement, this is your pressure feed line. It's got 2 clamps on it that's high pressure. I think that's 43, 45 pounds that this is pushing to the fuel rail. And over here you've got your return. We're going to pull both of these off after we relieve the pressure off the fuel rail, and then we'll pull the filter and let it drain, or we'll disconnect the filter and let it drain. This stuff I've learned on YouTube. If you check out OzStar, and I'll put a link on here, but there's a lot about Corvettes, and he's real detailed about his instructions, and I love watching his stuff. But another thing too, you can see back in there, maybe you could probably get to your tail lights if you had to replace them through here, if your hand is skinny enough. Yeah, you can't really see, but anyway, there's 4 hex to get these off. This work out very gently. Mine is not hard, but it's cracking in places. I'm not going to replace that. In the back, you've got a drain, and mine was clogged and it was holding water in here. And what I recommend when you get this out is just take an air hose and blow this out. And you can see right there what came out of it. So I cleared my line out, so that won't be an issue in the future. And also, when you're working on these, you'll have to take your gas cap off maybe to get to that. If you do, I would put a rag in there and make sure nothing gets in there. And you can see the underside of my fuel door, what holding water does. It has really screwed this up. I'm going to grind this back down to metal, and I'm just going to paint that. It won't match the body, but the underside, at least, I'm going to clean it all up and get it back to where there's no rust. We're going to take this heat shield off first, so we can get to everything, and then we'll go from there. 5/8 wrench and a crescent wrench for the filter is what I use to break these with. You'll be real careful. It's hard to get a wrench in there, and you definitely don't want to strip these out. And what I did is I just took the sending line off, and it was pouring a good stream. Now it's slowed down a little bit. I've gotten both sides broken loose. It was best to break them both sides loose a little bit before you start pulling them all the way out, because it'll just spray gas all over you. We got it broken loose though, and get it back in. So it works if you just take the supply line off at the fuel tank, the one with 2 clamps on it, and when you go back on, you want to make sure your arrow is pointed the right way toward the engine. That's the flow of the fuel. When you get all this put back together, you want to be real careful of this fuel line and not tear it up. You want to make sure there are no leaks at all. I'm actually running the car just to make sure that we are getting pressure everywhere, and we're good here. We'll check the filter out. Not seeing any drips, but we'll take our fingers and really feel. That's oil where I was going to take that off, or liquid wrench. You could put some thread sealer on here, but I didn't. The fuel would probably just eat through it anyway. You just want to make sure these are tight, but be careful not to strip anything out while you do it. I ran this thing for about 30 minutes and topped the transmission fluid off. I can get it warmed up before you can do that, but that's what came out of our oil pan. It only does it after you shut the car off, or our rear main seal for one, I think. So that's not that bad. I don't think it's going to be an issue just for daily driver status. I think eventually we'll pull this engine and fix all that, along with some improvements and upgrades too, though. Getting these things on and off the jack stands really aren't easy. You can see what I've done. I'm using 3 jacks to take it off of 4 jack stands because I had it pretty high up, and I've got along the reinforced side there with a piece of wood, jack on each side to take it up, and got these out. And then I've also centered up a jack in the front of the car. And just slowly I will go around and evenly let each one of them down until we're level to the ground. The jack stands were in the way of putting the X brace back in, so you've actually got to take it down to do that. These cars up from the side, which is a fair place to jack it up, but I would use a block of wood. You see what those side rails did to this wood. Imagine metal wouldn't give, it would have bent this frame. That's a brake line hanging down, but it'll go back up under the cross brace. You can see we have absolutely no damage. The wood absorbed all the pressure, and that's definitely what you want, is a little bit of a cushion there if you jack these things up along the door rails under the door. And I have figured something out about my instrument cluster. It actually works, and there's a trick to that. There is a polarized film that covers these and blocks out certain ultraviolet light. If you have a pair of polarized sunglasses, which my wife did, and I borrowed them, and once I put them up to it, actually pulled them back a little further, you can see that everything was working. So what I'm going to have to do is order that polarized film and peel off the old film off the cluster and replace it with the new film, and then everything will work. But as far as the electronics in it, everything's good on it. It works. But I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to replace the bulbs in it while I have it out, and put the new polarized film on it, and it will let the instrument cluster shine through. But that's a plus there. That means we don't have to replace that. We just have to work on it a little bit. The hardware for the X brace, the longer bolts go on the back, and then you've got some, I've got them here, spacers that they run through. They have to go back, but we were missing half the bolts in the front, so I'm going to have to go to the hardware store and match up some of these bolts. One of our holes is stripped out, but there were 2 holes with no bolts in them where the threads are fine, so we'll actually have it better than it was, but we'll be missing 1 bolt on the driver's side, but it will be snug enough. Got the car back down, and that's about it for this episode. Next episode we will do the fan controller and see how that works, and we're going to paint the bottom side of this thing and get it back on. But that's it for this time. I hope you enjoyed it, or got something out of it at least.